Shalom, guys. Welcome back to another episode here at YASHAV Ministries with Casa de Israel. Thank you again for being there. Like I always say, if you like the content that we have on our channel, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section down below. We're going to continue our weekly Torah portion, biblical reading. This week's Torah portion is Kedoshim, right? Torah portion Kedoshim, Leviticus 19, verses 1 through chapter 20, verse 27, right? The laws of holiness, the code of holiness. What does God require from his people? He requires them to be holy. What is holy? What is to be holy, right? So that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on that a little bit. We're going to go deep into it, just a little bit, not too crazy. But the idea is for you guys to have an idea of what does God ask of me. What is being holy? What is the definition, the biblical definition of being holy? And what is our perspective of being holy, okay? So, before we get to that, let's do the Torah blessing. Baruch atah Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'eh, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. Bless Adonai who's blessed. Bless Adonai who's blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. Amen. So, like I said, this week's Torah portion is Kedoshim. Starts in Leviticus 19, verse 1 through chapter 20, verse 27. And the prophet's portion is Amos, chapter 9, verse 7 through 15. And the Haftarah portion is Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 through 48. So, Parashat Kedoshim begins with the demand of the Israelites to be holy, Kadosh, and an account of their relationship with the Kadosh of Israel, the Holy One of Israel. This portion, or this Torah portion, focuses on the definition of the Holiness Code, which contains a bunch of mitzvot or commandments regarding practical ethics, any other portion in the Torah. It begins with God saying to Moses, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." And so this is very interesting because you might say, how is that possible, right? How is God asking me to be as holy as he is? Before we read, we're going to dive into the PowerPoint, and then we'll read from the Torah portion a little bit, and then I'll let you be free. I'll let you go be with your families for this Shabbat, and you can enjoy yourselves. And I hope you do your homework for my youth. Send some questions, and I hope that you participate. So, let's get to the PowerPoint. So, like I said, this week's Torah portion, Kedoshim. All right, now, chapter 19 echoes 10 commandments, right? So when you go to Exodus and you look at Leviticus 19, you will find yourself listening to the 10 commandments or to something close to the 10 commandments. You will see the reverence of the parents or honoring your parents, the Shabbat, idolatry, stealing, false oath, and obviously the declaration that I am your God, I am your Elohim. Like I said last week, and again I reinstated this book is going to start talking about the laws of holiness. Now, this chapter is organized around a series of preliminary apodictic statements. So what does that mean? It means that they start with do not or you shall, right? For example, verse 2 says, the Lord spoke to Moses and saying, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. God is setting the standard. And he opens up this Torah portion of Kedoshim with this and closes it up as well with this statement. And so why is Adonai giving us not only this command, but what does it mean? And so what is the idea of holiness? Or is holiness an idea? You must be holy. Israel must be holy because Yod He Vav He is holy. So to have a close relationship to God, the people must emulate God, imitate God. And this is something that was common in ancient Near Eastern societies, right? Everything they did was to imitate their God, and their fertility rituals will dictate this imagery. As God brought rain to earth and crops and fruit will grow, then man also felt that they had a part to do the same themselves, and they will imitate God and they will have weird rituals. But the idea was, I want to represent or enact God's power on earth myself. Okay? Imitatio Dei. So the theological terminology, I don't know if I said that right. Just want to imitatio Dei. The theological terminology for this doctrine is known as the imitation of God. Okay? Now, holiness could be a difficult thing to define or to describe. It is a mysterious quality of what does holiness consist. So when you say be holy, when somebody tells you be holy, or the Holy Spirit, so what is the idea behind, or if it is an idea, what is the holiness? How do you describe that? Because holiness is put into a standard where you are perfect, shiny, unblemished. And so this idea is what you might have as a concept of holiness, okay? Holy is in the simplest form is to be different from profane or ordinary. Now, what we have to have in consideration is that holiness may inspire awe, right? So, oh wow, holiness, and strike fear or evoke amazement, right? So, awe might be the splendor of the tabernacle, the structure, right, and the aura of the presence of Adonai. Fear could be, for example, Nadab and Abihu, when they go into the sanctuary unannounced, then fear the holiness of the sanctuary and the purity of it from them going in there without being commanded brought death to them. So that can invoke fear. The same thing with the story in the books of the Chronicles or in the Kings, where one of the soldiers went to put their hand on the ark, and they died because of the holiness of the ark. And so it can strike fear, or it can evoke awe or amazement, meaning, like, say, for example, the cloud or the pillar. All of those things are holy, separated to Adonai. They represent him, their attributes. Okay, so holiness could be seen as dangerous, but yet it is urgently desired because it affords blessings, power, and protection. And I feel like this is the concept that everybody has been hanging on to when it comes to a religious society or religious circles. This is, you use holiness or the idea of holiness, and you use that idea and twist it a little bit, because what is attached to holiness is blessings, power, and protection. But it depends on what holiness you are pursuing and what holiness you are teaching, preaching, or talking about, right? Because there's God's holiness and there's what men consider holiness. And if you are doing what men consider holiness, and in the process you're trying to find blessings, power, and protection, then you're missing the point, because it is not an idea that can be interpreted individually. Holiness is a concept, and it is, okay, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. So the biblical term for holiness is Kodesh. Now, the state of being special or set apart, right? So the youth should know this. So though the noun is abstract, it is likely that the perception of holiness was not abstract. In fact, Kodesh has several meanings, and it is used including in sacred place, sanctuary, or sacred offerings. All of these elements are active elements. The sacred space, the sacred sanctuary, the sacred offering, all of these are attached to actions. Chapter 19, verse 2 has something interesting, right? Because it says it possesses a theological problem, especially the second part of the statement, because it says, "For I, the Lord your God, am holy." And this is where it pauses, remember, because we're men, so how are we able to be as holy as God? God is saying, be holy as I am holy. So can we be God, right? Or can we be as holy as that God? And so it can be confusing. It can bring a clash of confusion, because it's like, you are not a male or a man. You are not embodied in anything. So how am I able to be like you if you don't have a corporal structure? Does this mean that holiness is a part of the nature of God? Or does it mean that holiness originates from God? So the Jewish tradition or view is that the statement is not describing God's essential nature, but rather his manifest or active attributes. This is what is interesting about this, right? Active attributes, right? So it is not saying that God's nature itself, it's not trying to tell you God's nature is holy, so your nature should be holy. He's saying, I do holy things. I act holy. My actions are holy. One of my attributes that I act upon is being holy. Now, be holy as I'm holy. Okay? An example between the human and the divine with respect to holiness is Exodus 20, verse 8. The Israelites are commanded to sanctify the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, and to make it holy. But, or yet, in the same verse 11, the same commandment states that it was God who declared the Shabbat holy. God also declared that Israel had been selected to be his holy people. But this declaration was hardly sufficient to make Israel holy. So, God says you are supposed to make the Shabbat holy. But he then says, I made it holy from the beginning. And then he says, you shall be a holy nation. But Israel is not a holy nation until they act upon God's holiness in actions. If after they imitate God's attribute of holiness, they become holy as Adonai is holy. So, holiness, in order to achieve a holiness of the kind associated with God, his acts, Israel will have to observe his laws and commandments. The way to holiness, in other words, was for the Israelites, individually and collectively, to emulate God's active attributes. And some of those are justice, righteous, mercy, and goodness. When I say holiness is the active or the action of imitating God's holiness, Alex, what are you trying to say? I'll show you right now. Let's go to Leviticus Chapter 19, where it says the following. Ve'edaber Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el chal adat bnei Yisrael ואמרת אליכם קדושים תהיו קדוש אני אדוני אלוהיכם. And in English it says the following. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to all the congregation of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Now, how are we called to be holy? Every one of you shall revere his mother and his father. You shall keep my Shabbats. I am the Lord your God. Be holy this way. Do not turn to idols and make for yourselves a molten god. I am the Lord your God. This is how you're holy. Now, when you offer a sacrifice of peace offering to the Lord, you shall offer it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, and the next day. What remains until the third day you shall burn with fire. So if it is eaten all on the third day, it is an offense, and it will not be accepted. Everyone who eats it will bear his iniquity, for he has profaned the holy things of the Lord. That person shall be cut off from his people. Now, when you reap from the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of the harvest, nor shall you glean your vineyards, nor shall you gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy and for the stranger. I am the Lord your God. This is how you are holy: justice, righteousness, mercy, and goodness. Imitating God, right? So holiness is not an idea or a concept. Holiness is an active decision, determination to imitate God's will, seek God's purpose, seek his purpose. And where is his purpose? We're reading it right now. Holiness is not tied only to the idea of a shiny body, a splendacious continents, right? It's not tied to that, because God is saying you could be holy as I am holy if you act upon this. You can represent me. You're not going to be me, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, but the closest thing to me is you. And the way that you're going to manifest my presence in the world is obeying my command, because I am holy. And if you follow my words, you're holy. You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. You shall not swear falsely by my name so as to profane the name of your God. I am Adonai. Again, now these commandments go from laws to standards of holiness. Because we see the Ten Commandments as laws that we have to follow because of But in reality, no. God is trying to give us the answer to holiness. And again, what is holiness? To be set apart, to be different, to be not profane or ordinary. Now, this is not to boast on other people or the nations. No. This is to humble ourselves and understand, because this people were told many times, remember that you were a slave in Egypt. So this is not about boasting yourself as an individual or as a community. It's to say we elevate his name through our active representation of his word. Okay? Now, also it says, you shall not oppress your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of a hired man are not to remain with you all night until morning. You shall not curse a deaf man, nor place stumbling block before the blind, but you shall revere God. I am the Lord. You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor defer to the great, but you are to judge your neighbor fairly. You shall not go about as a slanderer among your people, and you are not to act against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. You shall not hate your fellow countrymen in your heart. You must surely reprove your neighbor, but you shall not incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear a grudge against your sons, the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord Adonai. You are to keep my statutes. Okay? Now, so all of these elements are very important, because this chapter and the next chapter is describing what you do or don't do to be holy, set apart, be a light to the nations, be a light to the world. That what Yeshua called a light that you don't hide under the table, but you put on top of the table so it can shine forward. Because when you do justice, righteousness, mercy, and goodness, you demonstrate God's holiness. Hence, you're holy. And what does holiness mean? To be separate or set apart, to be different, not better than or smarter than or stronger than. Is to represent him above all things in humbleness, because he has that mercy on us when we didn't deserve it. So, with that being said, the goal and the idea is not so much holiness, is acting the whole. So, the point I'm trying to make is that holiness is not a mental concept or an idea that can be interpreted individually from one person to the other. And you can set your own boundaries to it. Holiness in the Bible has a specific marker and boundary established by God. And you're holy as long as you maintain yourself in those boundaries. It is not an idea. It already has been put into an action as an attribute of God. Is an attribute of men. And the more we try to minister and represent him and seek what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh wants from us, and how can we imitate him in the world, he will manifest himself in our lives for his sake. Be holy as your Elohim is holy, and read his word. These are the king's words. Read them, meditate on them. I know, kids. I know you guys, you guys get bored. You guys are too cool. But read it. Take some time. Do the questions. It's like 10 I sent. Put it on the page. I'll send it on the chat. I even put them on the description below. I'll maybe put the answers. So if you haven't gotten the answers yet, you can get them from the descriptions. But then again, you'll be cheating, and You should be ashamed of yourself. I already know Alejandro is going to go do that right now. So, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Please, like I always say, like the videos, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. I appreciate it. Honestly, it's a lot of work, but anything to, get better, because the world needs to know that there is a true king and a true God, and he's real, but he has structure and he has order in his love and in his kindness and in his mercy. So, download the app. Have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.